We are going live.
Awesome. Thanks, Javier. Cool. So did that first time on the agenda. No new faces that I see. So moving on to spec PRs. Let's share my screen. Can you all see this? Cool. So for new stuff that kind of came through, this was from a while ago, but actually took a pass at it this week. I think there's some open stuff for Steven here. Is that right, Javier?
Yeah.
Like this sentence here.
Yeah, like that sentence is confusing to both me and Jamil. And I don't know if we want to discuss that now. And then there's another one about the CNB file extension, whether we want to just do OCI layout format.
The CNB file extension, that was just an idea for, what does a build pack look like on disk, if that makes sense. The idea was just, it's OCI on disk, the standard layout for writing an OCI image on disk, but you put .cnb at the end so people know it's a build pack because it's not like a runnable image.
It does say or, so it's not required.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there a problem with that? I'm happy to take it out. I don't care about it that much. It's just something I threw in when I was writing it a long time ago, I think.
Yeah, no, so I think the problem, at least from what we learned through the implementation, is kind of twofold. One of them is that nowhere on the current spec does it say that it has to be an OCI layout format, which that is a spec thing now, right? That we found. And so I'm kind of suggesting that we add that. And then the other piece is that the .cnb part of a file actually gets lost in a lot of cases when you're basically just working with bytes at a certain level, right? And so really, I was just curious if it was even necessary.
I think it's more from when we talked about it, a suggested file extension if you were to have like an archive on disk. And I believe the or means, I guess it's confusing because it says must here, but it's listing on a list of things it could do. I wonder if we just move this into a separate sentence that it just suggests it like it may or whatever.
So sorry, go ahead, Steven.
Just to clarify the intent, I think it looks like it's saying a lot more than it's saying. The intent here is we assume a build package is an OCI image, right? That is a known, all build packages are OCI images. It's saying when it's distributed, if it's an artifact somewhere, it's still a build package. If it's in a Docker registry, even if the registry has done some weird stuff with it, it's still an OCI image in a Docker registry. In a Docker daemon, even if the Docker daemon has done some weird stuff, it's still an OCI image in a Docker daemon, even if it's not technically held in that. Or if it's on disk, it's if you want to put it on disk for some reason, right, then it should be an OCI image on disk with a .cnb extension. But it's not trying to make a statement about the internals of the build package. It's just about distribution, if that makes sense, because it's a distribution spec.
So okay, there's something else that's kind of that's going to come up, which is basically OCI layout format, right? Again, something that isn't explicitly mentioned here. But I do know that for the life cycle, Juan is doing some work to basically export out into OCI layout format. And so again, to me, it seems like we want to maybe focus in on the idea of OCI layout, and then whether it's compressed or not, that's sort of irrelevant?
The intent was for it to be a file in OCI layout format as a tarball on disk with a .cnb extension. So if you wanted to clarify in that phrase, in the sentence, a build package must exist as either an OCI image, an image registry, an OCI image, and a Docker daemon, or a uncompressed tar archive in OCI layout format on disk with a .cnb file extension. That sounds perfect to me.
Okay, cool. So now it seems like it's slightly different though from what Terrence was saying, is that it has to have the .cnb file extension, where
I don't care.
I mean, to me, it feels like extensions are somewhat irrelevant in the spec, right? Like, why do we have to say it must have this file extension?
It's like if you're, I think this comes back to what is the spec specifying? Is it API documentation? Is it a specification of individual components or whatever? The intent was to suggest that if you put a build package on disk as opposed to in a daemon or a registry, that it should look like this so that people know it is a build pack and whatever. But I'm not very strongly opinionated about that. That's just what I was thinking when I wrote the line.
Yeah. Okay. So we might throw some suggestions out there, and then obviously up for review and comments at that point.
Terrence, are you okay with that? Or I didn't want to, if you
Yeah,
had
no,
a strong opinion.
That sounds fine. I mean, I do like this .cnb file suggestion. I don't feel strongly enough that it is required. Like I'm fine if that goes from must to should or something along those lines. Like, we will recognize it and it should work, but I do think there's benefit for having a recommendation, so it's not just a bunch of like .tars everywhere.
Agreed.
Cool. So sounds like you have what you need there, Javier.
For that one, yes.
That one.
The top one, I'm not sure if anybody could shine some light on this.
I think this is probably helpful to actually look at what is above it versus the individual sentence by itself. But I think it's referring to like the stacks, right? When you talk about each listed target.
So for each listed target, all associated build packs must be a candidate for detection when the entry point build pack ID and version are selected.
Sorry, is this being shared?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I see at the bottom.
So if you see previously, it was in line 66 when talking about stacks.
Yeah, which is, yeah.
For each listed target, associated, all associated build packs must be a candidate for detection. What are targets?
Targets are the stack targets, like here, I assume. Well, this has changed, but
yeah, the new replacement of stacks. Yeah,
but be like stack ID and mixins and stuff, right? For before.
It seems like it's a very generic sentence, right? It's just saying like for each, I don't know if I'd say, I think target is not a new word for stack, right? It's like it was originally stack ID. And so I might just get rid of that part and say, all associated build packs must be a candidate for detection when the entry point build pack ID and version are selected. Maybe, oh, I see. I don't have too much context on this PR. This is, what's the goal of the higher level thing here? It's redefining what build pack looks like without stacks and mixins? Is that the?
Mhm.
Got it. And
Yeah, but this is a sentence that existed before, was Javier's point. And it's not like a new thing.
why I want to, before we get to that sentence, I want to understand what's driving out the sentence. It's like why do we have like before, could a build pack run on multiple stacks, and then it could a build package that contained multiple build packs run on multiple stacks, and then the right things inside would get selected depending on the stack you're using? Was that part of it?
Yeah.
So now shouldn't we rely on OCI artifacts to select that? And or not OCI artifacts, rely on manifest lists to select that? Like why do we continue to have that targets construct as something that we are creating?
That was a question that came to my mind as to basically why we're adding metadata. If you could scroll up, Terrence. So this
Like
is
to
the
this thing
IO
or
build
further up?
packs. Yeah, right there. The build packs layers. So this is like kind of a direct translation, right, of the build packs layer metadata JSON, but replacing what used to be stacks with targets, right? And so that's still metadata of the build pack itself.
Well, targets existed before, right? It just was inside targets that said stack ID and mixins instead of
Right, that's what I'm saying. But I think what Steven's saying now is that we're now relying more on the OCI spec as opposed to additional constructs within the build pack.
Yeah, like the point of remove stacks and mixins was to simplify a bunch of things everywhere, right? Not to rename them to something else. And so if you run into the stacks and mixing concepts in places, I think the better path is to remove them. And if we can rely on manifest lists, right, in those cases, to create different versions for the different targets, then use those. Manifest lists will do more than just, because this is something that our logic is parsing, right? They can do more than just OS and architecture. They can take into account all the different properties, right, as defined in the RFC. So I think
so
it's
you would
probably
actually gut all this then, right? Because you pull it from the OCI image.
Yep. Like I don't know where this section is. I think this is like, is this something that goes on this is something that goes on a build pack, right? And that build pack is already specific to an OS architecture and all those other properties by the manifest list thing. And so I think it can be taken out because it's you already found the one that corresponds to that subset.
Right. In the
Is
same
that,
order.
I think this is actually bringing upon complexity. So this is a build package, right? A build package could have multiple build packs. And so that's kind of the area that we're in right now. It's like saying inner build packs, right? So like I have build packs inside of here. And one of the things that we have are these like layered diff IDs, right? And all these layered diff IDs, would guess would be to very specific layers that would only be applicable to the OCI specified manifest list selected OS architecture and so forth.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah. So it's like the first thing that happens is you pick the one that, according to the manifest list, matches the OS architecture, distro, whatever that is most selective for that. And then within that one, everything is consistent. All the build packs are consistent just for that. If some of those build packs can run in multiple architectures, the layers will naturally get shared in the registry because they're just references, if that makes sense. And so it's okay to have duplicated references. It's not like we're duplicating the storage.
So I'm trying to remember back. So the OCI layout also supports manifest and therefore different architectures. Because
manifest lists, yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking whether or not that meant that we couldn't have a build package that supports multiple operating systems or architectures. That's not true.
That's right. And actually, the manifest list it's not just for OS and architecture. You can I've tested this on Docker Hub up to 10,000 manifest entries in a manifest list per list, and there's a generic properties field on each one. And so I forget what it's called, but so it can be as specific as you want. We can make them, just this is for Debian 7 on x86 Linux, right? Right. Or they can make them very, high level and just say this works on all x86 Linux. But it's no longer like an ID that represents an exact combination of those things. Instead, it's about selectivity towards the best option.
Cool. And I know that this label, where else does it get used? Maybe like on the builder or something like that. And so sometimes we do use, or I guess maybe I'm asking the question, do we envision using any of the targets information for other purposes, like when you do an inspect builder or inspect build package?
When you do an inspect build package, I think if the inspect build package command runs into a manifest list, then you'll have to be more, it could either give you the information for each potential build pack, or you have to be more specific on the command line when you do inspect and say, I want the one that's for this architecture or whatever.
And then one other thing, which I believe goes into target, that's not so much architecture. What was it called? It was like a target ID or something like that. To custom property.
Yeah, so that's not really related to selecting. It's not really related to the build process. It's more like when you're going to do a build, the run image you select can send some information back into the build, like they can be included in the build, right? So like when you say, okay, I'm going to pack build my app, but I want to use this run image that's missing these libraries, it could set an identifier that build packs can read during the build process that's like, hey, no, this is this version of the target, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, and so do we envision, or do we think that that would be useful or necessary to keep in the kind of generalized metadata?
It can't be there because you don't know it until build time. You don't know it until you're building your app.
You would know it from a build pack TOML's perspective, right?
No, so it's information that a build pack in its bin build could look for when it's building, but there's no target ID information in build pack TOML. It's just intended to be some metadata that the selected run image gets to provide into the build process. So you can use the same builder build image with many different run images, or another interplay with the Dockerfile RFC is if the Dockerfile RFC creates a stack in the end that looks a certain way, like a run image in the end, that run image could set an ID that then gets fed into the rest of the build process. If it changed the base image, for instance, completely to something else, like run image selection, then that new base image could provide a different target ID that feeds back into the build process. So it's not related to, or like, it's not information that a build pack knows statically at, that's put on it. It's not like a stack ID, if that makes sense. It's just something that says you picked this run image, so you might want to behave differently based on that.
Can we? We're at like 27 after. Can we take this offline? Sorry, didn't mean to.
Yeah, maybe we should have added
time.
the list for tomorrow, but
yeah. Just finishing up. Distribution spec. So we move in this direction. We're putting all this stuff in here. I read the Slack thread that you pointed to, Javier. I don't think it talked specifically about the lifecycle parts of it, but I think I probably just missed the direction that we were going with some of this.
Yeah, and I think it's worth bringing up right before we get too deep into it. But I know Emily, I believe actually it might have been Emily's idea to begin with. And it was something that I brought up to Joe, but I don't remember exactly, if it was on that Slack thread or something slightly different. But again, worth validating that cool. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, other than that, I didn't have really any problems with the thing. It's definitely a different direction than what exists there today. So just wanted to raise that. I don't know where the best place to carry this conversation if people want to do it on the GitHub issue, or if we want to actually have higher bandwidth conversation somewhere. And then in here, this is just merging in stuff.
Trying to.
So enjoying the spec repo. Cool.
Yeah, now that Emily's not here, and we're having to maintain it otherwise,
It's a good time.
I do wonder if we should discuss it again.
Yeah. Discuss just like the layout of the repo and how we merge
use the repo
branches and stuff.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause I definitely don't know the best practice. I don't know what's been happening in the past, but it just seems really hard to comprehend. And it seems abnormal.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know where you want to discuss that, but we should.
Well, maybe next week when we have hopefully more attendance, we could just bring it up in this meeting.
Okay. I feel like the problem with this means it tries to jam a lot of stuff in like 30 minutes, and it's hard to like even this discussion would be nice to talk about it at length without feeling the pressure of like, oh well, we got to get through a lot of other stuff. I think like if you're talking about the spec repo, that's not like a 5-minute discussion.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you all mind if I move to RFCs? I guess since we're at half. Are there any releases that are coming down the pipe that
we set up a definitive date for PAC, which is November 3rd. So next week we're going to go into code freeze.
Okay. There's no spec releases that are coming out for that, right? Like it is just supporting
Not that I'm aware.
Platform of 7 and stuff. Okay, cool. Moving on to RFCs. Starting from the bottom, we're still blocked, I believe, on the implementation team spike. See if it's still open. Support Docker files. I went through this for a good part of this week, just rereading it and stuff. I talked with Steven a little bit about this. Left some comments. Overall, I don't have any large issues. I think potentially extensions by itself is maybe confusing because we already have spec extensions, and we should probably just clarify that somewhere. And so talking with Steven, potentially we could just change the like maybe top level name of it to like base image extensions or something along those lines. And then when we refer to extensions to the rest of the like kind of either the RFC or the spec, like we'll know which one you're referring to. So I imagine just like when this actually gets spec'd out, like it took me 15 seconds to realize. I mean, it was very quick, but it was just like, oh, extensions. You don't mean extension in the spec, which is what it like is where we'll define it. So I think it's a little confusing, but I think the name's good. Just talking with like Joe and Jesse, but I think we do need to just clarify that a little bit, probably just at the top. And then other questions are, this seems tied to like the builder extension spec that we never finished a release. Do we want to do that as kind of part of this work to actually get that out there? Because it seems like just reading through the RFC, like that CNB X folder is on the builder image, right? At least initially, as talked about, and we still have that builder extension 01 release out.
Yeah, to that I would say that the whole distribution spec is with the idea of moving the builder spec into it. So essentially the builder spec goes away and it becomes a part of the distribution spec. And so with that said, if we agree, right, based on following conversations, that that's the route that we do want to go, Jamil could also make or incorporate some of these changes into that.
Cool. And then the last comment I had, I was talking to Stephen about, was just where we want to, I guess, version or whatever the extension tunnel. I think Stephen made some comment about tying it maybe to Buildpack API.
Yeah, I think these things are pretty close to build packs, even though they're used in a different context. They still conform. They haven't been build, they haven't been detect. I think, I don't know if we need to create a separate API for them, or if we can just include them in that API.
Is it part of the Buildpack API, or is it part of like the builder or whatever API?
Well, it's not really tied to builder, right? Like the proposal, I propose a lot of UX for builder in the thing, like what would it look like to integrate this into builders, but it's not supposed to be specific to that construct.
Yeah.
Like you could still use all these just by putting them on a build image next to, along with build
Yeah.
packs.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm thinking like if you had an extension tunnel and then potentially we added a key or something that added functionality maybe of some sort, or extended even like down here you have some, like we extended it to support like the LOB stuff right in the future. Like to me, that's an extension of what that contract is, of what we want this feature to do. And I don't know, maybe we make a breaking change or something. I don't know. I can't see it right now. Would you want a build image or like a builder type image to be able to support multiple types of extensions that way? Or are we, I guess that's where my head's going with that, if that makes sense.
Builder type image to support multiple types of extensions, like right, is it kind of similar to, should we be able to support multiple versions of the build pack API in the same builder?
Yeah.
It's the same, or like, I don't know if I have a good answer to the larger question, but I think it's the same question as for extensions as for build packs, if that makes sense. Like if we have a problem with mixing and matching build packs of different version API versions, we'd have the same problem with mixing and matching extensions of different API versions. I'm not saying it's not a problem. I just think we can try to solve all of that together if we find that what we have right now isn't flexible enough.
Oh yeah, I'm not necessarily asking for a ton of changes in the RFC, but like that question to me makes it seem like the extension thing maybe should have some version tied to it, whether that's it belongs in Buildpack API or something, right? But like,
yeah, so where do we envision this to be spec'd? In the build pack API?
I think so, but it's like we started shifting our specs to not define APIs, but to define components. So instead of like we've talked about, instead of a platform spec, having a lifecycle spec, right? And then because an extension is a different thing, I could see having a different specification document for it, right? But that's, I think if we're going to move that direction with the specs, then we should kind of decouple them from the APIs and say things in the build pack spec and extension spec are covered by the build pack API that's versioned together, or say that they're different API versions. I don't have a strong opinion. That makes sense.
That brings more to the table as far as the conversation on restructuring the spec.
Right.
Yeah.
So the spec in its current state, where it's a description of APIs, right? If we keep it like that, then I'd say probably put it in the build pack spec. But I don't have a very strong opinion about it. I think there are benefits and drawbacks to having to bump the whole API when we make an exchange to one or the other, right? For example, and because we're not at, I think we're still not at 1.0 with these version numbers yet. Everything is a breaking change technically, which is painful.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just the thought I had while reading through. Like, I can imagine this feature evolving and having features. I mean, it literally has stuff in here of potential things we would add, right? Like I could even imagine us doing stuff like as like that SBOM conversation as that evolves and things like that. We like even the base image stuff could change of how we do that, and maybe that could be breaking, right? And we want to be able to have a way to be able to differentiate how some of that stuff works. So
Yeah.
just being able to tie, really extension tunnel is just like tying the feature to some version. I just don't know. It's not clear to me from the RFC like where that lives or how that works. So that's kind of where this third question, I guess, like leads.
Yeah. I could see a bunch of different long-term solutions here. Like, do we need to decouple the file schemas from the API entirely and like let you mix and match file schemas and APIs? Do we need a separate schema version for each file that's different from the API? Do the APIs need to specify a range of schema versions that are allowed per API version? Like, I can think of a bunch of different problems that come out of this. So
Yeah.
I agree it's important.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, part of it's just like I want to see this go through, so I'm not like trying to necessarily like let's block and like. But I think I do want some answers, at least more so for the third one than anything else, of just like what do we want to do in the short term. We know it's not where we want the spec to be today, but we should probably pick a thing, and then with the plan of what the supposed spec factor of like how we're doing all this stuff to figure out what we want to do in the longer term.
What do you think we should do in the short term?
Um,
what do you want to see in the spec? I guess.
Yeah, I guess like is hooks. Like I feel like traditionally like a feature like this, like is this part of like, do we tie this to platform, or do we tie like, even though I don't know, I feel like there's not, like to Javier's point, there's not like a great place to put this today.
Is it an unanswered question?
Yeah, because the RFC change is like basically it touches everything, right?
Yeah.
I think like maybe like historically we would have maybe made this an extension spec or something, right? And then you could just define whatever in there, and then you could just evolve it. I think that's what we're doing with stack packs or something, right? I think that's how we would have done it maybe like a year ago when Joe was doing stack packs. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can chat in Slack on that, Steve. Figure out a way to move that forward. Cool. System build packs. Is Joe here? I went through this as well because this was kind of one of the other larger ones that I wanted to see move forward. Wait, is it system build packs? No, officially supported utility build packs. I think there hasn't been changes to the name on the namespace. I know build packs IO was one of them, but it still says CNB in the RFC. There's the, I think, name, like what team this actually falls under for owning. I feel like there's a strong desire for the BAT team to want to own this. So we need to update that. And then open questions on, I think some of the guidelines, like especially with the remove stacks RFC having been merged in. This talks about one of the requirements being like the any-stack. And I wonder, do we need to update the language with this RFC? And do we even care even to have a stack requirement? Like, are there cases where potentially if there was a Windows only utility build pack that we wanted, like, I think it was like one of Sam's questions, right? Like, if there was a thing that we did specific to Windows, like that doesn't comply with the any stack. And especially with like, I think targets, it becomes a little even more nebulous of kind of what this means. Like, will we just not want to, I mean, I get the intention of like, we probably should be writing things that probably are generic and support a lot of things, but I don't know if it should be a strong requirement anymore. But I kind of suggest that maybe we bring this up for tomorrow's discussion to try to get this to close. So I think there's some unresolved open things. Additional exportable layers. We all met, and I think Sam's still volunteering to rework some of this. Yes.
Yeah, I need to update it.
Cool.
I haven't got
Yeah, no pressure. That's what the status is, right? And then I think we're still looking for feedback on the project descriptor converter thing, including from myself. And I think that's it for RFCs. What do we want to talk about for tomorrow for agenda? I definitely want to propose the utility bill pack stuff. I think out of anything, I'd like to get clarity on Sam's question about some of the stack stuff, along with some of the other open things. If there isn't anything else that people want to talk about, I think maybe it is also worth talking about maybe some of the spec refactor stuff at the end, or in the latter part of the kind of thing, so people who aren't interested in that can drop off. And maybe couple that into kind of the support Docker file extension stuff as part of that discussion. Cool.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. I will update the agenda after the meeting and list those. Cool.
Thanks. I can't make the next one. Is there are we doing the meeting after this too today, this week?